recruiters become obsessed with the candidates that do not try so hard to get that job. Why? Because those are the candidates that are able to command authority in the screening call, and those are the candidates who are able to showcase real demand in the screening call, that they are the ones who everyone in the market is literally dying to hire. And that is possible even if you're a fresher. In this video, I'm going to talk about how can you showcase that demand in the screening call and how can you command authority without sounding rude, without coming across as really over empowering in the screening call, and doing it in a way that is strategic, doing it in a way that's tactical and makes the recruiter literally feel like, oh my God, I need to hire this candidate before anyone else hires it. And essentially, the recruiter will start working as a team. They will be on your side and they will be obsessed to make sure that you get hired. Why? Because technically the recruiter's got incentive to get you hired. Any recruiter's KPI are often to make sure that you provide a certain number of good hires, and getting you hired is basically their key performance indicator. So definitely, if you get hired, they're winning as well. Second, if they're a headhunter, if you get hired, they literally get a commission of your salary, and they get a separate incentive as well. So it is very much possible that the recruiter or the headhunter will literally fall in your team if you do these two things right. So let's talk about where this problem starts. And this is one of those problems that most of you are committing in screening calls and not even realizing it. Why? Because literally no one talks about it, because it's such an underlying and hidden problem. So let's start off with the feeling. You get a screening call, and after months of rejections, you finally got a screening call. The first thing you're going to feel, and I know how this feels because I've been in the same place and I've worked with hundreds of people who've done this. The first thing you're going to feel is you're going to feel like, oh my God, I have got a screening call after months of rejection. I do not want to mess it up. Oh my God, this is the best thing that's happened in such a long time. The feeling is okay. And that feeling is absolutely justified. But the problem is when that feeling translates into your job hunt. Now, most job seekers, because of this feeling, put the recruiter and the job on a pedestal. And they're like, oh my God, this is the best thing. And that's fine. But when you do that, 3 bad things happen. You lose the leverage in the entire screening call process. Why? Because it's such a big deal for you, which is fine, but you're letting it come in the interview process. I'm going to talk more about that. Second, because it's such a big deal, you rehearse your answers, you overcompensate and you over-prepare. And most of my candidates who do that sound absolutely fake. I've done hundreds of mock interviews, hundreds of people across industries, across seniority. And so when you overcompensate and over-prepare, you sound fake, and you can test it out by yourself. All of this causes your interview performance to drop sharply. And therefore, even if you do all this preparation and try to be a good candidate, you may be a good candidate, but you'll never be a must-have candidate. And it's the must-have candidates who get the best packages and get the best jobs. I have hired people and I've made, get people jobs across all the big companies, including Amazon, DHL, Uber, NatWest, you name it. And all of those candidates were must-have candidates who followed these 2 best practices in their screening calls and even in their interviews. So even if you're technically brilliant, you've got referrals, you've got a great CV, none of that would matter unless you're able to do these 2 really important things, right? So I'm talking about this problem a lot because this problem is perhaps so hidden that you will not even realize it unless I literally pull it out and put it in front of you. So as soon as you do these things, what happens is you try too hard and you lose your charm, and the recruiter loses interest in you. Why? Because the recruiter needs just 3 things. They need to feel that they've hired the best candidate with the best skills, highest in demand, and at a very, very good price. Now, if you make the recruiter feel like that, you've done the job. If the recruiter feels, after they hang the call up and they feel these 3 things, you're going ahead in the process, guaranteed, right? So, and that's how we're going to make them feel, by showcasing demand and commanding authority. Now, let's talk about the really fun thing, which is how do you really showcase demand and command authority? I have done a full interview masterclass on how to do this, but I'm going to share my top picks of what works the best. I'm going to give you examples. So the first reason why most people aren't able to showcase demand is because they have a lot of fear, like, oh my God, what's going to happen if I mess this interview up, or if I mess the screening call up? Nothing's going to happen. You're going to get another one. But regardless, that fear comes from a place of imperfect knowledge and not knowing the exact structure. And I often say that structure kills fear. So if you understand the structure of the screening call and reduce the level of imperfect knowledge that you have, that is, you don't know what's going to be asked, basically, if you solve that problem, you wouldn't be as fearful in the screening call. Now, a basic structure of the screening call is this: why us, why you, how are you, why the job, any questions for us, followed by 2 or 3 logistical questions like what's your salary, expectations, visa sponsorship issues, and if you're ready to relocate and stuff like that. And if the time allows, they're going to ask you one or two competency questions. Across all the thousands, hundreds screening calls that I've attended, I've taken, and I've trained people for, basically revolves around these things. So if you're afraid, oh my God, they're going to ask, this is it, right? I'm going to post some details in the description to tackle this properly and tackle these questions and everything. So don't worry about that. But first thing, to literally build that foundation of being able to showcase demand is to understand the structure and to make sure that the basics are all sorted. And I covered this right here as well. So the second thing, and this is the fun part, and these are demand generators. Now, during the course of the screening call, you would get multiple opportunities to sound smart and generate this demand while not sounding really rude and not sounding really arrogant. So, couple of examples. Let's say they ask you, what is your current employment? Now, most of my candidates and my clients who are coming right out of university basically say, well, I just graduated. I'm currently looking for a job. That's great. But again, you may be a good candidate, you'll never be a must-have client if you say that. What do you say instead? Let me take an example of a data analyst who's just graduated, right? They can either say, well, I've just graduated, haha, or they can basically say, and most of these clients are usually doing projects, they're doing internships, they're doing freelancing work and stuff like that, right? So this person can basically say, even if they're doing like volunteering projects, can basically say, instead of saying, well, I'm a graduate, they will say, I'm currently working as a freelance data analyst for multiple companies across the globe on interesting projects that leverage the use of Power BI, and maybe give a very short story of how you're working with a specific candidate or a specific client of yours. And that is okay, even if they're not paying you for it. So some people, in fact, literally talk about their forage experiences here, and that's okay, that's fine. So if they ask you, what are you currently doing? You do not say, I'm not doing anything. You say, I'm working on projects. Or you say that I'm working on some certification, but you never say, I'm just a graduate, you know. Ideally, you always want to showcase real industry experience, i.e. talk about how you're a freelance volunteer or how you're a freelance project manager or a freelance data person for some company, even if that company is not in the UK, that's fine, right? You can give it a global remit and make it sound nice. Next, if they ask you about your salary requirements, most people say, specifically, you know, people who are just entering the industry would go with something like, well, whatever, you know, you guys are offering, or, you know, I want to look at the process, or they will give a number, which is the worst, right? Essentially, you do two things. As an experienced candidate who understands the industry and wants to command authority, you will do two things. One of these two things, right? One, you would either say, you would defer the question by asking, what are your budgets for this role? I would be keen to understand your budgets for this role. Experienced candidates and authoritative candidates do that, and that's perfectly fine to do. If you don't want to do that, you will showcase your trust in the hiring manager and in the company and say something along the lines of, well, you know, with the matters of compensation, I trust the best judgment of the hiring manager and the hiring team. I would be very, very keen to understand this role a bit further before I can make a judgment of my compensation expectations. But as far as skills and my work experience is concerned, this is how it's aligned. And just, again, put a very short story of how you've worked in this similar situation before. Notice, most people say, I don't have any notice. I would always go ahead and say that I have a 1 month notice, unless the job explicitly states that we're looking to hire someone immediately, because experienced people and people who are in demand and commanding authority often have things to close. And if you don't have anything to close, you get 1 month of a break, just relax, just chill out. You've had a job hunt, right? So say that you have a month-long notice, unless the job explicitly requires otherwise. And if you're scared about saying that, always top it up with something like, I've got a 1 month notice. However, there may be a possibility that I can look at making it shorter, because since I'm working as a freelance, since I'm doing XYZ, I am happy to be flexible if that is a crucial requirement of this job. Just top it up with that, right? Next up, if they ask you about other interviews, you will say, while I'm not actively job hunting, or if you're actively job hunting, you probably have something or the other lined up. You will not say that, hey, I don't have any other job interviews. You would say, I'm actively in conversations with some recruiters across big companies. Even if that conversation just means that you're going on coffee chats with recruiters, that's perfectly fine. You will tell them that you're in a process, even if that process is you just having coffee chats, right? You will say, yes, I'm in conversation with multiple recruiters across the board, right? That shows that, again, you're in demand. Now, on connections, right? It's always a good idea to showcase that you are a part of the industry and you know about the industry. You will get multiple opportunities of doing that. For instance, the recruiter, again, data analyst, right? The recruiter asks you, well, tell me what time you use Power BI, right? While you give that story through the star method and whatever, you can basically say, I've also noticed that, Katie in your team actively uses Power BI for XYZ project. I'm very well connected with her on LinkedIn, and I definitely believe that I can add a lot of value to Katie's experience and to the projects that Katie is handling. I'd be really keen to, do XYZ into whatever Katie is doing. Now, you will only be able to do that if you research the connections and build a network before the screening call. You can do that. If you've got a screening call in 24 hours, just go on LinkedIn, go to the company page, go to people, search for people in the team, and you're done, right? So names drop people, that builds demand and that showcases authority. Now, next up, smash the basics. We've already spoken about that. Make sure the why you, why us, why the job, how are you, questions for us, or everything is sorted. We do a lot of practice around this in our interview masterclass and in our interview Q&A sessions in the club. I've dropped the link in the description. Check it out and sort the basics out. Lastly, always humanize and lead with stories, right? No matter what question they ask you, always try to put in a little bit of a story, right? Experienced candidates and candidates who've done real work always have stories, and you have stories even if you're a fresher. You just don't talk about them. So if they ask you anything, do you have experience with X? Just don't say, yes, I have experience with X. Give me a story. Yes, I have experience with X. In fact, working on X reminds me of my time back in Uber where I was doing X on this project. And just use the star method to quickly sum up a story. That is good, right? And humanize their responses. When they ask you, how are you? Just don't say, fine, thank you. Humanize it a little bit. Talk about something that you did over the weekend. Talk about, how you've picked up this new hobby of playing golf. And you've been really trying to do that while you're not really good at it. You've been really practicing for the last 4 weeks. And you're slowly becoming good at it. And that's really taught you the value of going out and making yourself available and really trying something new and the value it brings in your personal life. And just top it up. Don't be like so cheesy, but try to have something new. Try to be memorable. And that is what people who are showcasing demand do. Right. Quickly on how to command authority. Be prepared at any point in time. I do not recommend my clients to rehearse answers and write full answers. Just write talking points, right? What are your talking points going to be across these? What are your talking points going to be around, all the competency questions they ask you? Write talking points. And lastly, you will not overcompensate when you do mock interviews, right? I do mock interviews with hundreds of people and I automatically figure out when they're overcompensating, when they're overdoing it, right? So, and you will stop doing this when you practice saying it. There are two things to interview prep, right? One is preparing and the other is practicing. You may have prepared, but the more important bit is practice. Say it out loud. Do it every day. Call your friend, call your parents, whoever, and just let them ask you questions and practice saying it. The more you say it, the better you will become at it and talk about it conversationally, which is what the interviewer wants. Now, become fearless by mastering the basics, showcase that you're in demand, do all of these things and you'll automatically start commanding authority. I've done a detailed video around how to specifically talk about sponsorship and how to specifically talk about salary in the interview masterclass. So do check it out. I'm going to drop the link in the description, as I said before. But once you start doing this, once you change your paradigm towards not obsessing over getting that job, the recruiters will start obsessing over you. Lastly, a couple of things, right? If you do all of this, the recruiter will start to make sure that they take action fast. They will understand your value. You will keep the leverage for when you have to discuss important matters like sponsorship, salary, and other things. Why? Because you have showcased that you're a candidate in demand and you're a candidate that everyone's dying to hire. Next up, the recruiter will become a part of your team when you play the game like this. However, there are some very important caveats while you do all of this, right? You at any point in time cannot be rude. Always smile. Smiling in the interview and the screening call, if it's online, is so underrated. Always smile and never come across as rude. Be super respectful. Always be honest at any point in time while you're trying to generate demand. One of the things that people mess up the most while using the demand generators is that they lie. Do not at any point in time lie, right? That's the next very, very important thing. Third, in order for you to execute these two things properly, you must have top class preparation technically and across these things. And I've talked a lot about this. Ensure mutual respect and make sure that you integrate these things strategically in the process, right? Do not just start doing this by yourself. Wait for the recruiter to ask you these things and then bring this entire element and this thought process in the entire screening call. Now, I've attached more resources, more support, and how I can help you in the description, so do check it out. This technically is my first video on YouTube and first substantive video on YouTube. So if you liked it, please give me a like. That'll be fun. Subscribe. That'll be Absolutely amazing. And hope this was valuable. I'm going to create more content around CVs, screening call, and other things. So stay tuned. Thank you so much.